Welcome to the Insights to Communicate podcast with Adam Probalski, where market and opinion research come together with public affairs and PR.
Welcome to the podcast, Ashley Kochans, and we're glad to have you. I'm looking forward to talking about your journey in consulting world and maybe talk a little bit about research. Why don't you tell us about how you got to where you are today and your favorite parts about being a consultant?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Adam. The first thing you asked about was how I got here. And that's an interesting story because it was a little bit by accident. In 2020, I was transitioning from the public or private sector to the public sector. I wanted to work with more nonprofits, governments, etc. And I planned that career transition for March of 2020, which, if you remember what happened in March of 2020, wasn't a great time to transition careers.
Totally understand.
Yeah, so I had one client that soon became client zero and built my business really out of necessity to have a job. So I'm grateful for the push that the pandemic motivated me to found a business. And I found many reasons to love it since the accidental start. I think my favorite thing is being able to work with clients that I pick or that pick me. And so I get to promote causes that I care about, not just any old client that comes in the door.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's nice to be at that point in your career where you can make those kind of choices. I think some younger or newer consultants, I think sometimes don't feel like they get to make those choices, and they're envious of us. But you do typically get there at some point. I've definitely, well, I'll put it this way: I've definitely fired clients before. Have you ever fired a client?
Fire is a really firm word. I have raised prices with clients and they've decided to take the offer or not take the offer. I've also really changed the terms under which I work with clients in a way that sometimes leads to just them ghosting me, which has happened before. So fire is I changed the conditions of our engagement.
Sure. Okay, great. But you haven't had like a client that was so obnoxious or inappropriate or went so off track that you said, okay, I can't work with these people anymore.
Luckily, no. And I think that's because almost 100% of the clients I work with come in through referrals. And so I have a network of people that I've worked with before. They're great. They think that I'm great and they know great people. So
that's good. No, I think that's a great way of describing kind of the ideal client scenario is when someone comes to you from someone who you really appreciate, someone who you really respect. I like that a lot because in my business it's very much handshake. So if someone sent you to me, I know you're going to pay me. I don't have to worry about that part. I know you're going to be a halfway decent person. So yeah, that's kind of cool to get your business that way. That's very cool. So do you call? Go ahead.
I also really value transparency. So if I'm working with a new client, I make double sure to be almost over transparent in the proposal process because I want to be sure that the client knows exactly what they're getting, especially in a really technical world like digital marketing. That's helped get me into a lot of doors where people might not trust consultants that are selling something the client themselves doesn't understand.
Right. So looking at your experience and what you do for clients, I might call you a digital consultant. I might call you a communications consultant. I might call you a marketing consultant. What do you call yourself?
I usually say digital marketing strategist.
Okay.
And then, like most salespeople, I tend to alter that title based on who's in the room and what they're looking for.
Right.
So the overarching title is digital marketing strategist, but I've worked at the beginning of customer journeys in building awareness and lead generation, and at the end of customer journeys in guaranteeing customer success and retention rates. So really anywhere along that sales funnel, as long as that process happens online. I don't do much in-person like retail or product management, stuff like that.
And you say customer, and by customer, um, you might mean like the person engaging, but the truth is you work for nonprofits, you have corporate, you have potential some government, I think. So tell us about kind of like your client mix and what that looks like.
Yeah, that's a really good question because the end customer or the end user is different for all of those different industries.
Right.
And customer is the easiest way to summarize it, but the customer can be anyone you want to do a desired action. Like maybe you want volunteers to schedule a visit with a volunteer coordinator. Maybe you want to find more donors to secure donations, or maybe your business wants to just build referral partners. And so your customer, quote unquote, the person that we're messaging to, is other businesses like yours that are complementary and can refer you to the final user. So if a customer of mine, a client of mine, doesn't have those audience personas built out, that is the first step to finding who the customer is.
Very cool. So can you give us some examples of the kinds of customers that you have, or your clients that you have?
Yeah, so one that came up today, their name is Intrinsic Brands. They are an incubator and brand house for companies in the health and wellness space. They've recently pivoted to focus exclusively on comprehensive women's health. And that means that we're targeting industry leaders and thought leaders in women's health, the end consumer, the people that are buying women's health products, mothers, women, maybe even female caretakers caring for babies or elderly relatives. And the main audience, the one we're really trying to get into the door, is a founder of a women's health company that's looking to exit and sell their brand to Intrinsic.
Oh, wow.
So lots of different audience groups there.
Yeah, a lot of different audience groups. That's kind of exciting. So there's like verticals within the vertical. Is kind of amazing.
That's a good way to put it. It's like a matrix.
So do you have the conversation about working for this client with the same like person at the organization, or for each one of those verticals, do you have a different conversation with a different part of the organization?
That's a good question. The most effective engagements I have, I just have one point of contact, and that point of contact manages everybody else's opinions or the input that they need to have, and then summarizes it to give it to me. I have worked in capacities where I'm the main point of contact and I facilitate and synthesize all of those things. I have to say those are expensive projects. So if a client doesn't have somebody that can act as the project manager, I can, but the cost of that time is high.
Sure. So we've talked a little bit before we started about research and how that kind of comes into play with how how you use research to actually inform your development of your strategy, inform who you're talking to or how you're talking to them, what message you're using. Can you give an example of once a time when you've used research to kind of inform and it enhanced the process?
Yeah, so I use research at every step of the way. And I think about data in two ways. There's data that I have, and there's data I need access to, I need to gather. And so, in the case of data that I have, every single day I'm inside of Google Analytics and other website analytic platforms, and I can understand user experience and the customer journey just by looking at what pages are the most popular, what buttons people click when they land on that page, how long they stay on the page. All of that I already have. When I think about information I need to gather, that's usually surveys and sometimes person to person interviews with actual customers. So that is designing a survey that is meant to gather exactly the kind of information we need and distribute that out to people. And I usually phase it where we start with the data that we have to inform the data we need to get. And that's been an effective process for me in my business so far.
I love that way of looking at it because I always tell people, as a pollster, I think they assume that we only respect, polling data or qualitative, focus group data. And the truth is, we love data. So if you have data, we want to understand it, we want to see it, we want to look at it, analyze it, and we can use whatever you've got, even if it's imperfect. It's like it's data and it's useful. It has some utility to it. So I love the idea of kind of understanding it from those two perspectives of what you've got and what you need to get a hold of. So you are based in Denver, right, or Colorado?
Denver, Colorado. Yeah.
And you're a native of Colorado, and you never want to leave, or?
I am not. It's not a popular thing to admit, but I moved to Colorado in 2019 from California.
Ah.
So don't tell too many people that have been in Colorado for generations that they'll get mad at me for raising rent rates. But I, I, I am a transplant.
And what was the motivation for leaving California and going to Colorado?
A boyfriend that I'm no longer with, actually. So we were dating long distance. I moved to Colorado to close that distance, and it just didn't work out when I got here. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to have found Colorado. It is my home now. I love it. And I won Colorado in the breakup. He moved to Georgia after we broke up. So I think I walked away with the upside of the deal.
So I live in California, but I tell people that Colorado is the most beautiful place I've ever been. It is just, breathtaking almost everywhere you go. So I understand why you'd want to stay there. It's really pretty. So how about your career path before you got to be a consultant? I mean, well, people can start being consultants, but usually they don't have much success. How did you kind of get to the place where you are today, as far as career wise?
Yeah, it's a good question. I shared a little bit about how starting a consultancy was a bit of an accident. And I
Yeah.
tell people that period of my life was like birthing a baby and then realizing that the baby was talking and walking, and I needed to learn how to take care of this when I didn't even plan to have a baby in the first place. So I needed to go to baby school. And I took one of those boot camp programs that was offered by a local community wealth building agency here. And it was a 6-week program that gave me some fundamentals in the things I did not know how to do, like accounting or like systemizing my admin back end processes. And that did two things for me. I think a lot of knowledge gained, but also the investment that I needed to make in my business to just set things up the right way shifted my perspective from I'm a freelancer that is just doing this until the next thing happens to I'm a business owner that now owns a brand that could someday be something, and I need to treat it as such.
Okay. And you have mentors that have helped you along the way, or anyone that you've got to give a shout out to?
Absolutely. So I think the first mentor was Client Zero that I mentioned back in 2020. And his name is Noah. Noah was the executive director of the first organization I worked for. And he's since moved on to own his own business, but he was so candid in his feedback and informed my processes and product and services that he was a huge mentor through the process. I also in that boot camp had a team of 3 mentors that I worked with, and I'm infinitely grateful. Especially, I'll give a shout out to Kathy, who helped me in accounting, which was an area of weakness for me. She helped me get my financials and my books in order in a way that I didn't have to be doing so much manual work. So those 2 mentors meant a lot to me.
And I think some people might listen to you and talk about boot camp and say, come on, you can figure this stuff out, or you should have just known how to do this. If you know how to do your business, you can, or the functional part of your business, you can figure the other stuff out. Was it really that essential for your success, do you think? Or do you think it was, just kind of neat?
For me, it was essential. And I think the reason for that is that I didn't know what I didn't know. I never really wanted to own my own business. And I love it now, but there were lots of things about business management that I needed somebody to tell me. Even if I ended up delegating my bookkeeping or having somebody else file my taxes, I still needed to understand those things well enough to delegate them properly. And so I needed a friendly guide through that process.
Totally understand. Um, okay, and then let's talk about your tech stack. Like, how do you run your business? How do you communicate with your colleagues, your peers, your clients? What apps do you have to have in the morning when you wake up? What does that all look like?
Yeah, my home base is project management software. I think the people that know me are not surprised that I say project management software because they'll say something to me in email and I'm like, yes, let's carry this conversation on in this project management software. But I just manage so many projects that I need it to all be in one space. And so I like to manage projects in the project management software that the client is most likely to use. If I set up a killer Asana board and have all of the integrations and know exactly the right workflows, but the client doesn't use it, that's
Right.
worthless to me. So I've used Monday.com, Trello, Asana, ClickUp, pretty much every project management software you can find, I've used, and that's just for adoption on the client side. Um, the other thing in my tech stack that's essential is the invoicing and bookkeeping app Wave, which is actually free. So that's been huge. They take a processing fee off of invoices that they collect, but it's a free service and has been really helpful. I internally communicate with my team with Slack and, of course, with email.
Very cool. I wonder, how does that work though on the project management side? I totally get, like, you need the client to adopt it, but is that a little bit mind numbing, like switching between different platforms?
That's a really good question. And I have all of them set to integrate with a calendar. So this is tricky if somebody has a version that isn't a paid version, because sometimes the free ones don't obviously integrate with a calendar. But I have one calendar that's the source of truth for what's happening in every single project management software. And then that event inside the calendar links to the task in the appropriate project management software.
Fascinating. I mean, I have, one company and we have a ton of projects, but it's all kind of internal. So I generally don't have our biggest challenge is like when someone wants to be on Teams and we're a Zoom shop, like that's the hardest thing we typically deal with technology wise. But I can imagine that's not the easiest thing to do, but I guess that's why you charge the big bucks. Okay, words to live by. Motto. What kind of advice do you give everyone else in the world?
What a good question. My first thought was to go with something sappy, like always trust yourself or lead with kindness or
Right.
something. From a more business perspective, I think the thing that I do live by is always listen to the data and understand that your experience and your intuition are part of the data. Like those are data points that you can reference in a quantitative way, but there's also other sources to get information to inform your decisions.
I like that a lot, because obviously when we present data, we want people to kind of trust it. But we also always say that uh, you know people's organic experience is really important. Like, we trust our clients as much as we trust our data because we know our clients are going to have unique perspective that we don't necessarily have. So I think it's a great way of looking at it.
I just want to add, I think that like the experience we have in and around data can inform the type of data we need to go out and collect. And so listening to intuition and using that to design a hypothesis and test that hypothesis. It's part of the scientific method. We all learned that in high school, but we forget.
Yes, most people do. Awesome. Ashley, grateful for you being a part of the podcast, and we thank you very much.
Likewise. Thanks, Adam.
This has been Insights to Communicate with Adam Probalski, president of the woman and Latina-owned market and opinion research firm, Probalski Research.